So I made a huge mistake this week. Look, I say mistake. Welcome to the show. It is Positively Star Wars. Again, I am your host, John Justice, and I'm glad you're with the show again this week. I say mistake only from the standpoint of I have my own set of rules that I attempt to. These are self-imposed rules that I attempt to adhere to on Twitter. And one of those rules, not hard and fast, right? But one of those rules is, if there's an exchange between people on Twitter and I'm not directly tagged in it, I kind of avoid getting involved. I certainly don't like to stir the pot. I've been doing radio, full-time radio now for 26 years. I stirred the pot Monday through Friday on my radio show. And, as you know, if you listen to the show, retitled it this year, Positively Star Wars, because that's what I want the show to be. I want it to be a celebration of Star Wars, the love of Star Wars. We can critique, we can criticize, but I don't want to go down that hole of just straight up negativity. And I do respect other people's opinions. And in turn, I hope that people respect my opinion. Okay, so all that being said, there's a video going around. And I discussed this a little bit on last week's show, but, I think for a lot of you that listen to the show, you are probably completely out of the loop when it comes to certain communities within the Star Wars fandom. You're probably not even aware of them. And I think for different podcasters, there's different little sub-communities. I have a little circle of individuals that I interact with, my friends and my friend Zach over at Knights of Vader, Emery's and Luthien over at Girls with Sabers, sort of individuals that I've kind of met online but haven't spent a lot of time talking to. And so there's this little sort of circle of individuals that in this community that I'm involved in. Beyond that, when you use hashtags on Twitter like Raylo, right? You kind of end up meeting a lot of people within that community. And of course, the community of you that write in and email the show and listen every single week. Okay, so that being said, there's little things that happen inside these communities that other people are completely unaware of, and that's a good thing. I've been trying to really distance myself from a lot of the negativity just because I love the Rise of Skywalker so much. I don't want to have those experiences ruined, because other people didn't like it, and that's okay if they didn't. But I don't want to hear it. I'm not going to listen to shows, and I've had to turn a lot of shows off as of late. I don't want to listen to shows that are spending time tearing down this film. That's not enjoyable for me. Okay, so why am I saying all this? I'm saying all of this because there was a video going around, and you may have seen it on Twitter. It was a cell phone video shot inside of a theater, which appears to be a screening, probably one of the first screenings for the Rise of Skywalker, and it's gone somewhat viral within the Star Wars community. And the video shows the screen, right, showing the Rise of Skywalker at the very end of the film. Spoiler alert, obviously, but the crowd in the theater is incredibly passionate and upset. They're screaming at the screen. And it's right at the moment where the elderly woman at the end of the Rise of Skywalker on Tatooine asks Rey who she is. And you can hear people in the audience screaming, she's a nobody, she's a nobody. And when she says Rey Skywalker, you can hear a majority of people in the crowd erupt into anger and yelling at the screen and yelling profanities, okay? So Noah Outlaw is a fairly prominent individual on Twitter within the Star Wars community, in the podcasting community. He had tweeted that photo out, or that video out, and had made in my opinion, a fairly benign comment of, this is just wrong for people to sort of react this way in a theater. And he was taking a level of heat. He was taking some criticism from other people on Twitter for making that comment. And my takeaway from what Noah had said was kind of how I felt. And I interpreted his comment, and my apologies for not having it up here in front of me. I kind of made a snap decision before I started the show that I was going to talk about this briefly. I took it as it's not cool for people to be yelling in a theater, right? Ruining other people's experiences. That's how I took it. I didn't see his comment as being derogatory towards the people in the audience, or there wasn't anything mentioning how they're not allowed to feel that way, or it's dumb that they have those feelings and emotions. It wasn't that at all. I took it as, wow, if I was in that theater, and this gets to what I tweeted, if I was in that theater, I'd be really upset. I mentioned last week that I was listening to a rather popular Star Wars podcast, and there was a female host on that show who I kind of held a level of respect for. Both the hosts on there, they're pretty cool, and they know their Star Wars, and I thought these were individuals that I wouldn't have expected this to happen. And this female host mentioned, and again, I'm repeating the story, but it's relevant to what we're talking about. She mentioned how she guffawed, went ugh out loud at the very first screening of The Rise of Skywalker when Rey kissed Ben. And I was really shocked by that. I'm like, wow, I mean, you're a hardcore Star Wars fan. How, what if the person next to you, that really meant a lot to them, and like you ruined that moment? Okay, so I did what I don't normally do, and I retweeted and subtweeted that tweet, and all I asked was that a private or a public screening? Because that makes a big difference in my mind. Was it a private or a public screening? And I got a response from somebody saying that it was a private screening, and I commented, okay, well, if it's a private screening, and that's what the individuals going to that screening signed up for, cool. If everybody in that screening was aware that there was going to be live interaction from the audience during the film, then hey man, no harm, no foul. And then I commented, and this is where I made the mistake, and it wasn't really a mistake, I was being honest, it's just my opinion. I commented that if I had been invited to that screening, I would have been really upset as somebody that loves that movie, having it ruined by a bunch of people who, in that moment, didn't have their emotions in check and would not have been respectful to the other individuals in the theater. That's all I said. I didn't say anything derogatory about anybody. I didn't talk about gender or nothing. I took so much irrational, ridiculous heat over that tweet to the point where, like, the discussions that I got into with people that I don't know. These particular people I don't know, but the discussions that I got into, I was turned into some monster. I was some man-splaining, hateful, sexist, insensitive dude. I mean, that's what was written about it. I was honestly just dumbfounded by the response. And it's pure perception, and that's what I want to talk about before we get into some details, and then we get to your listener feedback. It's perception. We all have our feelings and emotions, and we're all entitled to our opinion. But the perception of the individuals who read my tweets was that I was this misogynistic, sexist man who was criticizing women for feeling the way that they did in that screening. I never even focused on, I don't even know if it was all women. I mean, there were women yelling in the video, but I don't care. I don't care who's yelling. I despise people yelling and ruining my experience in the theater. I love Depeche Mode. Love Depeche Mode. They're my favorite band ever. I don't own a single Beatles or Rolling Stones album. Right? Okay. And I know a lot of people going, what? I don't think I've ever even listened to a Beatles album top to bottom or a Rolling Stones album top to bottom, just as an example. Two of like the most famous bands, right, ever. I'm not a fan of them. That's what art does. Art is subjective. And one person's Depeche Mode is another person's Beatles. One person's Return of the Jedi is another person's, Attack of the Clones. I just do not understand, and I don't know how we move past understanding other individuals, accepting their opinions, and then moving on. It's just weird to me. I really love The Rise of Skywalker. And it's totally cool if you don't. I love the end of that movie. And it's totally cool if you don't. It's fine. I don't want people talking when I'm watching a movie. And if you want to talk during a movie, I hope you go to nothing but private screenings so you don't ruin it for other people. I just wanted to comment briefly on the fandom, and hopefully we can reach a better place within the fandom to where we're not doing this to each other, where people aren't, in my opinion, just irrationally tearing other people down. Like, I'm hesitant to post positive things on Twitter about the Rise of Skywalker because I don't want some Yahoo jerk coming in there and telling me I'm an idiot for how I feel about it. And by the same token, if somebody expresses an opinion, read what they're saying first before you just immediately jump to a conclusion that they're coming at you. Because like for yesterday, I wasn't coming at anybody by making those comments. And I don't quite understand what it is about this final movie in the Skywalker saga that's caused so much distress for so many people. I mean, I've heard, and I've talked to like my friends over at Girls with Sabers, and we've kind of exchanged our opinions over the end of that movie. And I understand how emotional people can be for films. I get that. But this was such a different experience right now within the fandom that I really hope changes at some point in the future. Maybe it will change with these new theatrical releases coming in 2022. Maybe now that we're away from this Skywalker saga and the sequel trilogy, we'll be able to land back on a place where as fans we can just discuss the movies, talk about criticisms, likes and dislikes without turning it into something personal. I will say that we should give some, within all the negativity and the frustration that a lot of people have with the ending of the Rise of Skywalker and other parts of the Rise of Skywalker, the other complaint being that Rose wasn't in the movie. You know, that's one of the, beyond sort of the movie elements themselves, complaints. But I think we need to give some credit to those that created the sequel trilogy, you know, Kathleen Kennedy, who put those teams together, and J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson, for creating these characters that people felt so passionately about, right? If people didn't feel passionately about these characters, then you wouldn't have these situations. I'm going to get to what this alleged next set of movies is supposed to be about here in just a moment. But I want to spend a second, since we're talking about the Rise of Skywalker, to share my thoughts about the end of the film. And kind of how I view these films. I've talked often about how I look at Star Wars movies like they're historical documents. These are things that just happened. I also judge, this is just me, but I judge what's in the films based off of what I've been given in other films. For example, somebody made a comment breaking down the end of the Rise of Skywalker. And the comment that they made was they felt that the ending, when it came to the battle over Exegol, that they didn't flesh out that battle. They talked about how it just seemed choppy, and we were supposed to, with that, the expectation that they had was this massive, epic battle to end all battles, and we had thousands of people, right? That's not a fleet, they're just people. Thousands of ships showing up, but we never got to really see those ships engage fully within those scenes at the end of the movie, and they were disappointed by that. I agree with their assessment. That was one of the things that I was really looking forward to at the end of this movie. I thought we were going to get this fully realized and fleshed out space battle. Something more along the lines of Rogue One, where you're able to, and what I'm talking about is being able to follow the action where you zero in, and the Death Star battle at the end of The New Hope is probably the best example, because we kind of go from pilot to pilot to pilot, and we zero in on these individual dogfights, and we see them play out, and then we cut to another one, and they're like these little mini arcs within this space battle. And you get less of that. I know a lot of people point to Return of the Jedi as sort of the set standard for Star Wars space battles. I don't. I look more towards the beginning of Revenge of the Sith, certainly the Death Star battle at the end of A New Hope, but also the end battle of Rogue One. And I was really expecting, wow, we're going to get this really epic, flying in between all these old Star Destroyers and just thousands of ships that we've never seen in battle before and coming to their aid. And we'll see, N1 Naboo starfighters and Geonosian fighters and all this stuff. They're in the battle, by the way. You got to kind of find them, but they are there. And we didn't really get that. We get a couple of really amazing shots when Zori Bliss shows up and she takes out the gun at the bottom of the Star Destroyer, and then she contacts Poe in the cockpit over the radio. That was a really cool moment. There's a couple of neat shots. There's a couple of slow motion shots when the TIE daggers are taking down the ships, and you think that the Resistance is done right before Lando shows up with all the ships, right? But here's why I'm not bothered by it. And I am a Star Wars apologist. I wear that as a badge of honor. I am absolutely a Star Wars apologist. And this is why I don't mind. I don't mind because, one, I like what they gave me. Visually, it's stunning and it's exciting. And I would encourage you, if you're seeing the movie multiple times, the scenes when they are invading the General Pride's command Star Destroyer at the end of The Rise of Skywalker, take your eyes off what the camera is focusing on and look around. There's a lot of fantastic action taking place, and you can actually follow dogfights within those particular scenes while Jannah and Finn and BB-8 are attempting to take out the bridge of that Star Destroyer, which, by the way, and I'm going to forget it, and I keep forgetting to mention it, those dual moments when Rey destroys Palpatine and Finn turns the gun turret with Jannah there and just bam, 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 and it fires on the bridge of General Pride's Star Destroyer, and you see him walking up in slow motion yelling, and then it explodes and it throws his body out. That series of shots are amazing to me. The strength at which the way that scene was shot and the strength at which it looks like those cannons are firing those lasers is so intense. I love that moment. Okay, so let me finish my point. My point is, I'm okay that we didn't get what I was expecting at the end of The Rise of Skywalker because I can go back to those other movies and I can see those other space battles. So I'm okay with that. And that whole end scene, and I don't know if that was the intention of J.J. Abrams in the filmmaking process to do that. I don't know if that was his thought process that, well, we've had other space battles. Let's do something a little bit more chaotic, a little bit more kinetic, where we don't follow the action in sort of a linear fashion. We'll shoot this more as if you were an observer watching what's going on, trying to keep tabs on what's happening around you. If that was the case, that's fine. But when I walked away from the film, I didn't leave disappointed. I left going, that ending was amazing, and I was thinking more about Rey and Ben Solo. And then even when I thought, I kind of wish I would have had a better space battle at the end, I go, that's all right. I can go back and watch Return of the Jedi or Rogue One or Revenge of the Sith or A New Hope. Again, I look at all these movies as an entire saga and what they give me in terms of entertainment. And I have plenty of different options when it comes to Star Wars of seeing what it is that I'm in the mood to see. And one of the things about The Rise of Skywalker that I do love so much is that for me, that movie, after seeing it 8 times, as I've talked about with J.J. Abrams before, is infinitely rewatchable. From the moment the crawl starts and the words, "the dead speak!" exclamation point, every time I've gone to see it, it's like, man, game on. And from the opening shot on Mustafar all the way to the end, there's no part of that movie that I want to go to the bathroom. And for a 2.5-hour movie, it just trucks along. And I know that there's sort of wonky editing, and I know that there are some questions that are kind of like, how do you answer that? The door of the X-wing on Octo with Luke. Ben Solo taking the TIE fighter, we assume, from the Death Star 2 to Exegol, doesn't have a hyperdrive. How did he do that? Which Wayfinder was in which of how many different TIE Whispers did he have? Man, it's Star Wars and it's made for kids. While I'd like to have some answers, I really don't care. Because the movie is just so darn fun. And the movie is filled with characters that I love in their best performances, in my opinion. And I have come to that conclusion. The Rise of Skywalker, I like The Rise of Skywalker and The Last Jedi more than I like The Force Awakens. I love both of The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker for very different reasons. They're both amazing Star Wars films. One is more artful and slower paced and has, you could argue more depth, but I think J.J. Abrams actually did a really good job of bringing some depth into The Rise of Skywalker. And I really do think The Rise of Skywalker is a pretty cool combination of what Rian Johnson started, combined with J.J. Abrams' action-oriented and his specific style of filmmaking, along with his cinematographer. I really like what they did with the story and the visuals and sort of the depth of the relationship and the concept of the dyad. And I really do think that The Rise of Skywalker is a very nice complement to that masterpiece that Rian Johnson created. When it comes to the end of the film, and then we'll get to this article, what's the future going to hold when it comes to Star Wars, and then your listener feedback this week. When it comes to the end of the movie, I want to make this comment, and as I've said, there'll be plenty of weeks ahead to discuss this movie further in different details and points, but I just want to talk about one thing real quick, and I want to talk about Ben Solo at the end of that movie. I agree with everybody who has made a comment about how enjoyable Adam Driver was once he became Ben Solo. I like the fact that we leave that movie wanting more of Ben Solo. I like that. I like that because it adds to the enjoyment and the heartfelt, emotional, albeit tragic end of Ben Solo at the end of the movie. Because I'm sure Rey wanted more Ben Solo too, right? And I know that's one of the chief complaints from a lot of people. And when it comes to maybe perhaps having that happen earlier in the film, no, I don't want that. Because I love all the lead up to Ben Solo's redemption. And I love everything that we get from him from the moment he arrives and his face pops up there standing next to Luke's X-Wing that Rey flew and his TIE fighter, and he rushes in and he jumps down and grabs on to the massive chain, does that ow to the fight with the Knights of Ren. All of it, all those moments with Ben are just amazing. This is the point that I wanted to make. I personally find that arc and those last moments with Ben Solo to be incredibly meaningful. As a married man, married to my wife Melinda now, going on in May, it'll be 20 years. There's a lot to take from that, right? There's a lot of relatability there. And in a lot of ways, right, the sort of the I don't want to say the mark of true love, but when you kind of go to describe, ultimate love to somebody, what's the ultimate way that you can express a love, for somebody else? For my wife, it's doing the dishes, and the laundry. No, but it's that you be willing to lay down your life for the other person. The other person is more important than you are, right? Ben had been searching for something since his introduction in The Force Awakens, and he thought he had a chance at it in The Last Jedi, and he didn't get it. And what I think, in my opinion, is the intentional repetition of Kylo Ren extending his hand on the Star Destroyer before Rey jumps for the Millennium Falcon. That repeat of that scene of him holding his hand out, asking Rey to take it, was an incredibly necessary moment because he tried it once and it failed. He tried it again and he's failed again. And he keeps failing at the thing that he wants because he doesn't realize that he needs to do the right thing to get it. Rey saving him in that moment after Leia intervenes before he has his memory moment with Han Solo, when she makes that comment, I did want to hold your hand. Ben's hand. She showed him true compassion by not killing him, by seeing that there was still an opportunity there, right? For whatever your particular thought process is as to why she did that. I I know there's, and I'm sure maybe something with Leia. She's feeling what happened with Leia, what Leia was trying to do. She saved, Leia was trying to keep, Ben from going all the way to the dark side and certainly hurting Rey. So she reaches out to him in that moment that provides Rey the opportunity to stab him with his saber. But she decides she's going to save him. And for me, she decided that because she still saw that there was a chance there. And then Ben starts to make the decisions that set him on his path, that lead him to that finale. And what happens in that finale? He goes to defend Rey, to help Rey, and ultimately to lay down his life for Rey. Because he finally realized how wrong he'd been for so long, and that he needed to do the right thing to get what he thought, to get what he actually was looking for and what he wanted. And what I love about the moment is, in my mind, Ben has absolutely no way of knowing when he climbs up from the abyss and he takes what little strength he has left and hobbles over to Rey, and she's dead as a doornail. And he's holding her in his arms, and it's this, I can't wait to hear the commentary or J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio talk about this scene, but it's this, for me, that moment, it's like he doesn't know what he's going to do. He tried so hard, and he finally turned away from the dark side and embraced the light and came to rescue. And after all that and surviving being thrown into the abyss, she's gone. And then you can see the wheels turning, and suddenly he realizes, okay, I can bring her back, even though it's probably going to cost me my life. And he does not know, at least in my mind, he does not know what Rey's reaction is going to be in that moment. But it doesn't matter to him because he's going to do the right thing. So he extends his Force essence, his Force life, his Force strength, what he has left, to her and brings her back to life. And what is the result? An incredibly joyful, beautiful, smiling Rey who finally sees Ben. And Ben can witness it. He sees it. And I can only imagine how in that moment, how he must be feeling, that this is what he wanted all along. And not even that, it goes a step further, and she embraces and kisses him. And when they pull back before he passes, that look of pure joy on Adam Driver's face before he tragically loses his life into the Force. It's a beautiful, beautiful moment. And as a married dude, and I know that the opinions are different for a lot of you out there. And I know that there's a lot of you that are really upset that Rey wasn't able to experience more with Ben Solo, and I get that. I am okay with that for a myriad of reasons, and I won't go into it on this show. I just want to focus on Ben. But as a man, as a father, and as a husband, it's also sort of a cautionary tale that, your actions have consequences. And it's not all about me, especially when you're in a marriage. It's not about me. It's about my kids, and it's about my wife, and it's about appreciation and consideration and conversation and being there for the other person and looking at that other person and going, your life is more important than mine, and I would lay my life down for you. That's how much I love you. Of course, Ben did have to transform into the Force, and Star Wars has done a really good job of handling that, in my opinion, right? Rejoice those who have transformed into the Force, and mourn them do not, miss them do not. It's just another pathway of life, and that's the way that I felt from the get-go. And I'm not going to lie, when I saw the leaks, I was with a lot of people in saying that I didn't really want Ben Solo to die. I really wanted that hopeful fairy tale storybook ending, but it is Star Wars, and Ben Solo was responsible for a lot of bad deeds. And even though he made the right decision in the end, and people do deserve second chances and the chance to be forgiven, I took his transferring into the Force and being redeemed as the payoff there for him. But there had to be some kind of sacrifice. And I really understood that when I saw the movie. And I'm not going to say that I'm glad I saw the leaks, but I was kind of glad that I was prepared for it, and I was keeping an open mind, and I'm glad that I did, because I'm very, very happy with the way that it turned out. From a more practical standpoint, I don't think that Adam Driver is going to be doing any more Star Wars, and so I guess to step back and look at it from more of a cultural impact part of it, I'm kind of glad he's gone, just from the standpoint of, well, we don't have to worry about waiting or desires for ancillary material to, have further conversations about when are we going to see more Ben Solo, even though I know that's what a lot of people are hoping. I've seen theories about the world between worlds and Rey going and getting him and bringing him back, and I've seen people on Twitter saying they need to recut the movie and re-release it with Ben Solo living, and I don't agree with that at all. I am just one fan, though, okay? So if you adamantly disagree with me, that's totally, totally fine. And I hope you can find enjoyment in this film like I do. I just love Star Wars so much. And we've got such this vast array of films to choose from based off of what kind of mood we're in. I mean, that's how I look at it. And The Rise of Skywalker is just a fun adventure and pure Star Wars to me. One last point, and then we'll move on to some of the stories we have this week. But the soundtrack to The Rise of Skywalker is on par with The Empire Strikes Back for me. That is hands down one of the greatest Star Wars soundtracks from John Williams that he's ever done, second only barely to The Empire Strikes Back. There is something about some of those new themes that John Williams created that were instantly iconic for me. Instantly felt like Star Wars, hit me right in the feels. Even in the nostalgia feels, even though they're brand new themes, especially the theme of all the friends together. There's one track on the soundtrack, We Go Together. That's sort of the main crux. At the end battle, they bring in the whole big fanfare, and it's just incredible. At the end of The Empire Strikes Back, when they're that moment when they're trying to catch Han Solo before Boba Fett takes off in Slave One, and they're running through Cloud City. There are fewer moments on par with that one for me that really it's like, that's Star Wars. Oh my gosh, that's amazing and epic. And I can't hear that theme or Yoda's theme without just immediately being being taken back to 1983 when the movie was released, and I was, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 years old or whatever. The soundtrack to The Rise of Skywalker is just absolutely just fantastic. All right, Huffington Post has an article, and then we'll get to the future of Star Wars. Let's go ahead and what do we want to? I haven't done like a changed up sounder in a long time. All right. Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker editor reveals answers to major mysteries. So let's run through a few of these. Why Rey and Kylo kissed. When Rey and Kylo snogged, according to the article. This is the Huffington Post UK, so we didn't really use that term in the Americas. It was the kiss heard around the galaxy. The moment made Reylo fans shout for joy, and detractors just shout. Ain't that the truth? According to, this is the editor's name was Marianne Brandon. According to Marianne Brandon, there was a lot of back and forth about whether the scene would happen at all. And they cut a lot of different versions of should they and shouldn't they. I always said the movie will tell us whether they should kiss or not. We will know by the time we get to the end of our process if it should happen. And I felt that it should, and J.J. Abrams agreed with me, and other people who saw the film agreed. I know it's not for everybody. She said at the kiss, I know there will be people who would wish they hadn't, but this film was never going to please everyone, and I think the reviews kind of reflect that. Yes, absolutely. The things that certain people love, other people hated, and that's just the phenomenon of Star Wars. Why didn't we hear more details about how Palpatine survived? The opening scenes with Palpatine were tricky in terms of how much character backstory to explain. It was a delicate balance. We went back and forth about how much we wanted to reveal. Some scenes were changed quite a bit. The way that we wanted to present it to the audience, in the end, we ended up showing a lot less of what we started with. There was originally a little more information about it, what was keeping Palpatine alive, but it seemed to go off topic. There was so much information in the film and so many characters that we wanted to have the audience concentrate on. I think we felt we didn't want to clutter up the films with things that we didn't need to know. I do think, too, that I say this cautiously, right, because I don't like going down this road that often, but I do think, too, that there might be something to playing to the general audience, which is the biggest audience. You want a movie that you can repeat in theaters. The general audience isn't going to care about that minutia as much as you and I are, because we're the minority of the hardcore fandom, right? It's the general audience has given Disney and Lucasfilm most of their money. Like my friends, I told them about the door on the X-Wing on Octo being Luke's door in the hut, and yet the X-Wing's in one piece, and they're like, I don't care. I told them about the hyperdrive on the TIE Fighter, like, I don't care. So this is the casual fan move, in my opinion. Why Palpatine lost? In the movie, Palpatine says if Rey kills him, his spirit will enter her, he'll have won, but she kills him, why doesn't he actually win? She can't, said Brandon, to the suggestion that Palpatine could just be unplugged, right? Also, could Rey not have just unplugged that big machine that was keeping him alive? She can't kill him in anger. The whole reason Palpatine lost was because Rey didn't strike him down in hate. By ending Palpatine the way that she did, reflecting his Force lightning back at him, Rey was able to avoid playing by Palp's rules. And also, the best excuse that I have for that, and a lot of these different sort of questions, is because Star Wars. Why Snoke was revealed as a clone. The Rise of Skywalker finally gives us some answers. A scene showing multiple Snokes held in glass containment seemed to suggest that he was a clone used by the Emperor, which Brandon confirms. I just think that came up as a visual effect that we thought would really be fun for the audience, to create a visual that would tell that whole story, she said. I believe that's successful. We didn't have to change a lot of dialogue. You just see one shot, and you kind of get it. I love stuff like that. We can't just have a moment where you just see something in the background and you go, okay, I totally get that. And we'll stop there. There's a couple other things. They mention Rose, why she didn't get a lot of screen time. And she just mentions how there was a lot of characters in the film. JJ wanted to make this film about a journey of three main friends and Rey's conflict with Kylo. She is an important character. We tried very hard to show that in the film. I think we did, but the film really just couldn't handle much more character stories. The editor said she went to Rose a few times at the end of the movie to make sure that she was given her due. We all loved Rose, and we want to make her character sing, and that's why she's in the end battle. And I cut her a few times in the end battle because I know she's a fan favorite, and I wanted to show her. I cut to her a few times in the end battle because she was the editor. I wanted to show her being involved. And that's, by the way, one of the criticisms that I've often have when it comes to people complaining about The Last Jedi and, like, Finn not having any role in The Last Jedi, or people complaining about Rose, right? And it's understandable. If you want a more Rose, you want a more Rose. Nothing you can do about that. But Finn and Rose, are the B plot. Well, C plot, essentially, but almost the B plot of The Last Jedi. And they have a full story in there. I mean, you could take the Finn and Rose story, like, out of The Last Jedi and, like, make it its own, like, little Star Wars episode, like, on Disney Plus. And I never understood that. I thought, and I know people have said that they felt that John Boyega had complained about his role in The Last Jedi, and I don't even agree with that. I thought he has an amazing role. He's in that film a ton, just as much as all the other characters are, say, in, like, The Empire Strikes Back. And he has that amazing fight with Phasma at the end. To each their own, like I always say. Sometimes I do not understand some of the complaints. They just don't work for me. I think part of it comes down to Star Wars movies are movies that need to be seen more than once. And I think that Star Wars movies are movies that you actually need to see twice before you can form an opinion, especially if you're a hardcore fan. Take Frozen 2, for example. I did not like Frozen 2. I was surprised that I didn't like Frozen 2. I loved the first Frozen, but the second one just didn't sit well with me. But I went in with really, really high expectations for that film, and it's now the highest grossing animated film of all time. And I've come to the conclusion that, you know what? I need to go back and revisit that movie before I can come to a final decision on whether or not I really don't like that film, because I don't think I gave it a fair shake the first time around. And the same thing I think can be said for Star Wars movies. That's not to say you need to see The Last Jedi a couple times and then you'll love it. There's people I'm sure that have seen it many times and still hate it. But I think a lot of people only saw it one time and then haven't bothered to revisit it, and maybe they should, right? I think the same thing rings true for The Rise of Skywalker as well. But to each their own. All right, let's switch gears. Jason Ward over at MakingStarWars.net put up a video about the new trilogy or series of movies. Apparently, these are going to take place during a new era called the High Republic era. This will be taking place 400 years before the Skywalker saga, and this will tie into the multimedia project Luminous. Okay, so there was a leak about this project Luminous that has a bunch of different writers, and the rumor is that there's a bunch of different content creators, apart from the movies, that are going to be putting together a series of different, a bunch of different Star Wars content, books and comic books and audiobooks that will all be based around this particular High Republic 400 years before the Skywalker saga, the Phantom Menace time period. For those that know, they did this with Shadows of the Empire. For those that don't, Shadows of the Empire was a project after the original trilogy of a story that was set in between A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back? Yeah. A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back. I don't think it was, A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back. And it was basically everything but a movie. It was a book, it was a graphic novel, they had a soundtrack, they had toys, they had everything except for a movie. Project Luminous sounds very much the same. And now Jason Ward is reporting that this new series of movies, and it sounds like they're going to do what I said that they should do, and that is make one film and then just start making other movies, don't get locked into a trilogy. That this will also take place during this High Republic era, 400 years before the Skywalker saga. I like the idea. If we're going off of what was said in The Phantom Menace, right? The Sith have been extinct for a millennia. That's another, 600 years, right? 1,000 years? Is that right? 1,000 years? I think it's 1,000 years. So that's still another 600 years before when the High Republic era takes place. So if that's the case, then we're not going to be looking at Sith. Jason Ward's leak said that it's going to be about the Jedi searching into the unknown regions. And so most likely we're going to end up getting another nemesis, another set of bad guys for the Jedi to have to deal with apart from the Sith. Look, I'm game for it. I am incredibly interested to see how they reverse engineer Star Wars, right? George Lucas did it in a very weird way. George Lucas, when he did the prequel trilogy, turned it more into this craftsman period where things were a lot like the prequel trilogy is a lot more like sort of your standard sci-fi fare before George Lucas created the lived-in universe look. A lot of craftsmanship. The Naboo starfighters, Naboo in and of itself, they're all very shiny and new and very artistic. So it'll be very interesting to see how the creators go and reverse engineer Star Wars to make it feel like Star Wars, but 400 years before. I'm really interested to see that from a visual and aesthetic standpoint. The other reason I like it is an area that hasn't been explored. If you were to go to the Old Republic era, 1,000 years before that, we've got a treasure trove of things that we could be pulling from, and I fear that once we start going into the Knights of the Old Republic and Old Republic era, we're going to be in the same place in the fandom that we are right now, with just a lot of negativity and expectations not being met, and there's nothing we can do about that. I'm trying to change the way that I consume social media when it comes to my fandom to kind of push away and mute the negativity that's out there. But hopefully by diving into this particular time period, we can avoid a lot of that. At least that's what I'm hoping for. So what do you think? TalkShowNerd at gmail.com while I transition over to listener feedback. Again, you can go to TalkShowNerd at at gmail.com. You can also leave a comment on YouTube. So looking at the clock, here's what we'll do. I got a lot of listener feedback. I'm going to go through a bunch of these. If I didn't read your listener feedback this week, do not fret. I'm hanging on to them, and we'll probably try to go and address it next week. So with all that being said, let's make it official. All right, first comment comes from Nat Fantasy. Your positive outlook on the sequel trilogy is something so very special. Thank you very much. Thank you for your videos, John. Always a pleasure to watch. Thank you very much for that. I really do appreciate that, Nat Fantasy, and thank you for writing in. All right, Everson says this. There was a statement made by John Williams' brother a while ago in which he said that every theme from the previous episodes would be a 9, and he said that is true. Part of Across the Stars plays at the very beginning of the track A New Home. On some Exegol scenes, you can hear the Sith motif from Episode 3. The Anakin versus Obi-Wan part that plays when Yoda throws Sidious over his chair can be heard at the exact moment that Rey throws her lightsaber at the tree during her training. The moment that Palpatine shouts, "The Jedi are dead," to Rey features a snippet from the Order 66 theme. The Rise of Skywalker is very similar to Anakin's theme from Episode 1. I mean, very similar, writes Everson. So much so that they have identical parts. Some bits that have nothing to do with the soundtrack. Episode 1 introduces us to the first Skywalker, on the planet Tatooine, and Episode 9 ends with a new Skywalker on the same planet. It's a really good comment. Thank you, as always, Everson, for reaching out. I really do appreciate it. All right, let's go to FN1189 says, I like the Rise of Skywalker VHS cover. Where'd you get that? So I used this photo for the picture for last week's episode on YouTube. I got it off Instagram. Yeah. My buddy Zach, if you follow Zach Weber, Knights of Vader on Instagram, he's got, I'm pretty sure he's posted up like some VHS versions, images of VHS versions of the sequel trilogy. They're pretty cool. You should go and check those out. But thank you, FN1189, for asking the question. I appreciate it. Serial Keller 1 says this. Was looking forward to hearing some positivity in our beloved fandom. I can talk of the things I wish that would have happened in The Rise of Skywalker all day long after The Last Jedi. But what fun is it to sound like a crybaby because you didn't get your way? I'm an art teacher for grades K through 8th, and my students have all loved the film, especially the girls in the middle who cried when Ben died and followed that up with it's their favorite film now. I told them I wish that they could tell other Raylos on Twitter who act like the ending left them needing therapy and were personally attacked. Long story short, it's nice to hear from my favorite positive nerd battle buddy. Thank you, Serial Keller 1, for the comment. And look, and somebody's going to point this out, but I'll make the comment now. It's not. I mean, look, I'm a Raylo, and it's not all Raylos that are having this particular issue. Okay, and for those that are, I hope you're dealing with it, and you are absolutely entitled to your opinion. Just don't come at me for having mine. Thanks. Luna Gurr writes this. Thank you so much for the podcast. Thank you, Luna. I love the new name, and I'm very grateful that your content will be primarily about a love for Star Wars. I am a Raylo. Tross is probably my favorite Star Wars movie now. 4th time was tonight. And I, too, just want to have fun. I'm sick of the negativity. There seems to be a growing movement about that. I really think there is. All right. Chris Olivo says this. The negative Star Wars YouTubers have an agenda, and it's just for clicks. For a lot of them, that's absolutely true. I do agree. Most of them hated The Rise of Skywalker before it came out, and that is why they showed their hand. Now they're just all complaining that they want to see the JJ extended version when we all know they would have complained if that were released in December. It's good to see a few positive YouTubers, as the whiners just need to move on from the franchise. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. Not Obvious writes this. Thank you for the positivity on a movie that was so very good and a great ending to an epic mythology. Not obvious? That statement was good. I was going to say it was obvious, but it wasn't obvious, so that would have been a dumb joke. All right. Silver Maiden 42240 says this. Not all Raylos are online spreading negativity and raging. I am a Raylo. I was extremely disappointed with some of the decisions made in The Rise of Skywalker. Rey Palpatine was the easy way out. Disagree, but that's okay. Ben's death was also the easy way out. I disagree, but that's okay. I only disagree because clearly that wasn't the easy way out because not everybody, but a lot of people seem upset about it. So. But again, right? Art is subjective. Just my opinion. Absolutely. All that being said, I'm so glad that many people enjoyed the movie. I will take away the beautiful moments like the father and the son scene on the Death Star. I have an empty feeling in my heart mourning the way they chose to end the Skywalker family line, but I'm so glad that others found joy in the same moments that I found lacking. We can agree to disagree. Yes, we can, and thank you, Silver Maiden, so much for your comment. All right. Me-Man says this, I hate it when fans use ancillary material as an argument. Sorry, but it's ancillary for a reason. It doesn't matter. It may be canon for branding reasons, but when it comes to canon, it's only the films that matter. Fan obsession with canon is often biased and skewed. And that is true, by the way. And Pablo Hidalgo from the story group has said that. He has said many times that all the stuff that gets released, right, apart from, for the most part, the Lego stuff, but all the stuff that gets released is canon, but it's only canon if the movie doesn't supersede it. All right. Chris Ross says this, I appreciate your positive outlook and commentary. I get depressed watching some of the other Raylo channels, so I really like hearing what you think. I'm sad, though, that Ray is alone, hoping for the Den of Nerds theory that she's forced pregnant with twins. Ben put his hand on her belly while resurrecting her, and she put her hand on top of his when she came back. He knew she was pregnant and sacrificed his life not only for her, but for his family. I also listened to you while mindlessly entering invoices for work. I don't get the Rose kerfuffle. She had no real part in the story. She was a bit character and had her time in The Last Jedi. I would have rather seen more Connix since she's Carrie's daughter. I wish Ben could have lived, but I understand why he had to die, at least partly. I'm going to say this. I really hope that we get Rey back at some point in time. I really do. I loved Daisy Ridley in The Rise of Skywalker. I thought that she was just fantastic. And all the performances from the characters are my favorite performances, from Adam Driver to John Boyega to Oscar Isaac and to Rey. Rey is easily my favorite Star Wars character now. I just love her performance in The Rise of Skywalker, and I honestly love her performance more in The Rise of Skywalker than I do The Last Jedi. I really like what J.J. Abrams did with her dialogue, the way that he handled her, and how joyful she was in so many moments in that movie. There's just the little subtle moments when she's talking with the little Aki girl on Pisana, and she gets the necklace, and she says, "I'm just Rey," and she's smiling. And when she heals the serpent, and she talks to BB-8, and she says, "You would have done the same thing," while she's smiling and rubbing her hand. There's just these little, and in the end, of course, just bursting, her face just glowing, seeing Ben Solo in front of her, which, like I said, just adds to the tragedy of what happens right afterward. Oh, I want to go watch the movie again right now. I just got back from seeing Underwater, though. Not a bad little hour-and-a-half horror flick. I'm glad that I used my AMC A-list to go see it, but I'm a Kristen Stewart fan. It's only me and Edward that seem to like Kristen Stewart. So, anyway, I can't wait to go see Rise of Skywalker again. All right, one more comment, and then we'll wrap things up for this week. Patrick Musson, a friend of the show, says this. I just bought EMBARK. That's my science fiction novel, part of my series, on Amazon. Thank you, Patrick. I hope they deliver it soon. I can't wait to read it. I haven't read it yet, but I'm looking forward to the next in the series. And I've had some other comments from Patrick that I'll share on next week's show. And again, for everybody that and thank you, Patrick, for writing in and your support too, man. I really do appreciate it. Thank you to everybody who has who's written in. And again, if I didn't get to your email this week, or your comment this week, I did hang on to them. I will get to them next week. I'm trying to get the shows just right in an hour time frame. And some of the lengthier ones I want to be able to spend some time with. So I think next week we'll spend a little bit more time on listener feedback, and I'll use that as as more of the core of the show. But that's it for this week, and thank you so much for hanging out. I hope you had as good a time as I did. As always, if you want to support the show, please head on over to Amazon.com and pick up a copy of my science fiction space opera, EMBARK. Books 1 and 2 are out right now, EMBARK and EMBARK Treasure in Darkness. Book 3, The Vanishing War, I'm in the middle of editing it right now. The artwork is already done. You can go and check out the cover art at mynerdworld.net. Cannot wait to get the book out there. Doing the editing is a lot of fun for me, and I really like. I love the way the story turned out, and I know that if you liked the first 2 books, you're really going to love the third one. But don't delay. You can pick up the ebooks right now for $2.99. Purchase of the ebook gets you the audiobook narrated by me at a drastically discounted rate. Both audiobooks were narrated and produced by me, so you can check those out. Also, the paperbacks are available as well, and that's the way you can really support the show. If you've already purchased the book and you go, well, I still like to support the show, John, what can I do? Buy a copy for a friend. When you go to Amazon, you can gift it to somebody. So gift a fellow Star Wars fan an ebook of EMBARK 1 and Book 2, Treasure in Darkness. Also, I have one more thing to add, and I'll do that right after we get past the... Well, no, you know what? I'll go ahead and do it here. Let me just say this real quick. I'll spend some more time on next week's show. But I finally realized why I loved The Rise of Skywalker so much. I like to watch other science fiction space opera-like films that remind me of my book, that have sort of elements and stuff like that. I just love sci-fi movies and space operas. Even movies that aren't, like, great. So, like, I like Valerian. I love that movie. Jupiter Ascending is another one that's a lot of fun, another space opera. The Fifth Element movies. I really enjoy those. I really enjoy those films. Alita Battle Angel. And a lot of those ones... Independence Day Resurgence is another one that I'll watch when I'm trying to be inspired to write my book, just because there's some elements with the moon and the ships and all that. Watching The Rise of Skywalker this last time, I realized that there are 9 different specific plot and story beats that are just like what I put in EMBARK. It's pure coincidence, and it only happened because I wrote EMBARK, and I'm writing this space opera. They're not copies, but they're homages to the Star Wars adventures. I want them to be fun Star Wars adventures. And so while they're set in a future Earth timeline, and they're very much just morality tales of good versus evil, there's a lot of elements in there that sort of echo Star Wars. And so because The Rise of Skywalker is kind of an homage to previous films, even though it's very different from all the other movies. There's things in The Rise of Skywalker that happen in other films. There's a lot of these story beats that align right with what happens in EMBARK. And so I'm watching The Rise of Skywalker the other day, and I went, oh my gosh, the ending of this is so much like my book. But in the best possible way. So I realized, wow, if I ever want to watch a quasi-movie version that has things that are like my book, I can go watch The Rise of Skywalker. How cool is that? Support the show. Go pick up a copy of the book. It would mean the world to me if you would. That's the way to do it. I don't do a Patreon. I may sometime in the future, but for now, I just ask that you support my trying to be a successful author. So Amazon.com, John Jon Justice, and search for EMBARK. And when you read it, and if you like it, go and leave a positive review. And if you have read it and you did like it and you haven't left a positive review, that's another way that you can go and help support the show. All right, I'm done going blah blah blah. Have yourself a fantastic week. Looking forward to hearing from you between now and next week. And again, those comments I didn't get to, we will get to them next week. Now here is Obi-Wan to say, may the Force be with you, just like I did. Bye.
The Force will be with you, always.
My Nerd World.